Verónica vive en la zona altiplánica de Bolivia. Su familia se dedica a la cría de alpacas y llamas desde hace 60 años.
Tengo 23 años, soy de la comunidad de Choñacota. En el Ayllo viven de la ganadería. Nosotros vendemos como la alpaca, la llama, la oveja. También ¿no? Esquilan también y entonces venden sus prenditas. Vendemos, tejen, es buena calidad. Con eso vivimos, tanto la carne. Cuando le carnean, vendemos también esa carne.
El cambio climático ha incrementado las sequías, heladas intensas y granizadas, lo que ha disminuido la esperanza de vida de los animales. Si bien los animales están acostumbrados a vivir en temperaturas frías, sufren si hay fuertes vientos o si no hay refugio.
Más antes, cuando no teníamos proyecto, las llamas en tema del frío, las que nacen, a veces le congelaba, ya que ahora con el cobertizo eso es mejor todavía, ¿no? Ahí van a estar más retenidos las más criitas, ¿no? A veces venía el zorro o la puma y más que todo están ahora.
Well, climate change impacts small producers in different ways. This can have in turn an impact on the quality and the quantity of the fodder the farmers can get from their pastures, but also from their feed crops. Climate change can also impact glaciers, so it can reduce the availability of water at certain periods of the year.
El proyecto Procaméridos es financiado conjuntamente por el Fondo Internacional de Desarrollo Agrícola de las Naciones Unidas, FIDA, y el Gobierno de Bolivia. Además de cobertizos, los agricultores recibieron bombas de agua que funcionan con energía solar. Ahora son capaces de extraer agua de los arroyos subterráneos.
The project is supporting 30,000 families in the region, and many of them are women, young people, and indigenous people. And the project is helping on the technical side on the farm, but also in the processing and marketing of the products. The price that a farmer can get out of an animal has increased by 50% thanks to the project.
Puede que el clima esté cambiando y las condiciones sean remotas, pero gracias al proyecto, esta comunidad dispone ahora de las herramientas que necesita para vivir en este maravilloso pero hostil entorno.
El corredor seco centroamericano es una región donde más de 10,5 millones de personas viven y dependen de la agricultura para sobrevivir. Cerca del 50% de esta población vive en condiciones de pobreza, enfrentando los desafíos que imponen las condiciones climáticas extremas. El corredor seco se caracteriza por los largos periodos de sequía seguido de lluvias intensas, representando un desafío a las prácticas agrícolas en esta región y poniendo en riesgo los medios de vida y la seguridad alimentaria de las familias rurales. En muchos casos, estas familias se ven obligadas a migrar, dejando atrás sus tierras y comunidades. Ante este escenario, en el marco del Programa de Cooperación Internacional Brasil-FAO, la Agencia Brasileña de Cooperación, la Organización de las Naciones Unidas para la Alimentación y la Agricultura y los gobiernos de Guatemala, El Salvador y Honduras han sumado esfuerzos para desarrollar el proyecto Innovación para la Reducción de Riesgos Agroambientales en los países del Corredor Seco Centroamericano, Zonificación Agrícola para Riesgos Climáticos SARC y Gestión de Recursos Hídricos, gracias al cual los países están desarrollando estrategias que orienten la implementación de acciones y programas que permitan generar resiliencia y transformar de manera inclusiva los territorios del Corredor Seco Centroamericano. Para ello, la FAO y el Gobierno de Brasil han compartido conocimientos técnicos y experiencias de instituciones como la de la empresa brasileña de investigación agropecuaria Embrapa, acciones a las que se sumaron los ministerios de Agricultura y los institutos de investigación de los tres países. El Instituto de Ciencia y Tecnología Agrícola de Guatemala, la Dirección de Ciencia y Tecnología Agropecuaria de Honduras y el Centro Nacional de Tecnología Agropecuaria y Forestal de El Salvador. Con la introducción de variedades de ciclo fenológico tolerantes a la sequía, este esfuerzo conjunto ha permitido brindar a las familias rurales mayores capacidades para planificar sus actividades agrícolas.
¿Listo? Bueno, empecemos entonces. Muy buenos días. Muy
Good
buenos
morning,
días a todas y a todos. Vamos a
everyone
dar
joining us here
inicio
today.
a nuestra
Let
mesa
us begin
redonda
our
dedicado
high-level
sobre los efectos
roundtable
del niño y
on
la
El
respuesta
Niño
a las
impacts
costas
and
del
response
fenómeno en
in
América
Latin
Latina
America and
y
the
el Caribe.
Caribbean.
Antes de continuar, es importante
Before
dar algunas
continuing, I would
indicaciones
like to
sobre la
provide you with
interpretación
some
simultánea.
instructions for
Tenemos interpretación
simultaneous
tanto en
interpreting
inglés y en
services,
español en
which
la
are offered
parte de
in
abajo de
English
la
and
pantalla
Spanish
y una
today.
vez más
You can
en la
access this
parte de
service
abajo.
on the
Just to
toolbar
please be aware, we have simultaneous interpretation. At the bottom of the screen, you can see the symbol. You can change to your preferred language to English or to Spanish. Entonces, empecemos entonces. Permítanme presentarme.
All right,
Mi
then, allow
nombre
me
es
to introduce
Tania Niño.
myself. My
Yo
name is
soy
Tanya
gerente
Nino.
de
I
alianzas y
am a
especialista en
partnership
protección social
officer and a
de bajo
specialist
nivel
in
en
social
Américas y en
protection
Naciones Unidas. Y en nombre de
at
mi
FAO.
palabra, tradicionalmente en nombre de la Organización de las Naciones
And on
Unidas
behalf
reconocida
of
para la
the
alimentación
Food
y
and
el
Agricultural
desarrollo,
Organization
FAO
of the
y
United
del Fondo
Nations, FAO,
Internacional
and the
de
World
Desarrollo
Food
Agrícola de
Program,
queremos darles la
and
bienvenida a todas y a todos ustedes
IFAD,
a este diálogo
welcome to
regional
all
que
of
hemos
you
estado
today
preparando
to
para
this
ustedes. Hemos
regional
estado
dialogue that
revisando
we
por qué,
have
porque está
organized for you,
llegando, porque se
because
avecina
we
una
are on the verge
normalización
to
y el
receive
objetivo
the
principal de
Niño
esto es
in the region.
sentarnos,
And
conversar,
one of the
alinear
purposes
los
of this
objetivos y
roundtable
lo
is to
más
uh,
importante,
align our
acelerar la preparación
actions, to
para
accelerate
transicionar
our
a la
preparatory
llegada
work
del niño. Yo quiero iniciar,
for
por
the
supuesto,
arrival
dándole
of
la
the Niño
bienvenida
and to
especialmente a
communicate.
ustedes, a nuestra
So I would
audiencia
like
que ya
to
sabemos se
welcome
está conectando
all
de
of
toda la
you
región.
joining us
Muchas
here in the
gracias por estar de
audience
todas partes, por
from the
acompañarnos.
region.
Muchísimas gracias y bienvenidos.
Thank you
Hoy
for
también
being
tenemos un
here.
conjunto de
We
panelistas
have
increíbles que nos van a
an
estar
excellent
acompañando en este
panel set
arranque.
up for
Por
you
fuera entrar en
today.
materia, yo creo
And
que lo más
prior
importante es de una
to
vez empezar a presentarles
talking
la
about the
agenda un poquito que
content of
tenemos
the
el
meeting,
día de hoy.
allow me
Y esto
to
bien formalizado por
refer to
parte
the
nuestra, que es
agenda.
nuestra base,
Now,
nuestra
the
sede en Roma. Hemos organizado esta agenda para que nos permita tener
Rome
diferentes
headquarters of
visiones,
FAO has
diversas
organized this agenda
perspectivas
with a
de
view
cómo
to having
prepararnos,
different
de cómo
visions and
organizarnos, de
perspectives
cómo
as to
estar
how to best
listas y
prepare
listos para
and
lo que se
be
viene
ready
el niño.
for
Lo
the
primero que vamos a
arrival of
tener
the
es
Niño.
una
So first, we will begin
visión
with
por parte de nuestras
a
directoras y directores regionales. Vamos a ver por
perspective
aquí
from our
nuestro
regional
representante regional por
directors
parte de la FAO, que nos va a hablar un poco
from FAO
de
specifically.
datos
To
y
begin,
evidencia que
this
nos
individual will
cuenta de
provide
cómo
us
está
with some of
avanzando
the
esto. La
evidence and
directora
some
también Silvia
statistics and
y por
data. We
supuesto
will
a
also
la
hear from the regional
directora
director of the IFAD
también
and the
que
regional
está aquí.
director
Ella nos
of
va
the
a hablar sobre la importancia de la
WFP, all
preparación
of whom will
y
talk
diseño
about
de
how
programas
important it is to
y
be
políticas
prepared
que van a
so that we
respaldar
may
la
be more
importancia de contar
resilient.
con los
And
sistemas de
then we will
protección
also
social, un
refer
tema
to the
muy
importance of being
importante.
better
Pero
connected with the
antes de todo
social
esto,
protection
para estos
systems, which is a
representantes de
very
nuestros
important
territorios,
concept.
vamos a
And
poner
prior
una
to giving the floor
diapositiva
to
que
the
es
regional
situada
directors, we
en
will
encuadre de
receive a
preguntas que nos va a
presentation
permitir
by
conocer
the
y
UN
entender cuáles son los
framework
impactos
presentation,
que va
if
a
you
tener
will,
esta
that will
noticia de
set
que el
the
niño
scene
esté
and allow us
hoy.
to better
Y esta
understand the
es su
potential
primer
impacts that we
acercamiento,
will
nos lo
feel
va
in
a
the
dar
region.
el
And this
director
will be
de
given
la
by
Organización
the director of
de
the
las Naciones para las
meteorological
Américas. Ya le vamos a explicar,
organization,
ya le vamos a tener
the
especificados.
regional
Finalmente vamos
representative.
a terminar con
And
un panel
then
increíble, un
we
panel
will
que va a
wrap up
tener
the event with a high-level
muchas
panel
perspectivas. Vamos a
discussion
tener representantes de gobierno, vamos a
with
estar
government
panelistas, vamos a
representatives,
seguir bajando con el Ecuador, pero también vamos a
regional
tener
bodies,
organismos
and
regionales como
ECHO,
Preparedness y por supuesto también la mirada de donantes
and
y
of course,
ONGs.
the
Esta es un poco la agenda que nos hemos
donor
planteado
perspective
para el día de hoy.
on behalf of ECHO.
Nuevamente,
And that is
bienvenidas y
what we have
bienvenidos.
prepared for you
Voy
today.
a
So
empezar
welcome.
entonces
Allow me to
dándole la
begin
palabra a
by giving the floor
pues estamos
to
a esta primera intervención,
the
que va a
first
ser muy
speaker,
importante, que va a dar el marco
who will
general
provide
del
us
entorno
with
en el que estamos
the
el día de hoy.
framework presentation to
Y
set the
quiero
scene.
invitar al señor Julián Báez Benítez.
Mr.
Julián es el
Julian
responsable
Baez
de la
Benitez
parte de su
is
pantalla para que lo
the
podamos ver.
individual I am referring to.
Sí, estoy aquí. Muy buenos
Muy
días.
bien,
Good
muchísimas
morning,
gracias por estar con
everyone.
nosotros.
I am ready to give
Julián
my
Báez
presentation.
Benítez es el director de la
Julian
Oficina
Baez
Regional para
Benitez
las
is the
Américas
officer
Complementarias
of
de
the
la
regional
Organización
director of
de
the
las
Americas
Naciones
of the
Unidas. Julián, qué gusto
World Meteorological Organization. So welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today. I would like to give you the floor so that you may refer to the potential impacts of El Niño in the region. As I have been told that you have a presentation that you will be sharing with us. So please be aware of the time constraints. Thank you, Julian, and welcome.
Gracias, Tania. Un
Thank
saludo a
you,
la
Tanya.
FAO, FIDA
Thank
y
you
a la
to
ONA por la
FAO
invitación.
and the
Voy
World
a
Food
compartir
Program, as well as
presentación.
IFAD
Dame
for
un
hosting
segundo.
this event. If you will give me a few moments, I would like to set up the presentation and share it with you all.
Um, disculpen que no estoy... ¿Qué problema? A ver, ¿ahí pueden ver mi presentación?
Todavía no.
Can you see my presentation?
Adelante ya está cargando, pero todavía no la estamos viendo. Vemos tu pantalla, pero no vemos la presentación.
We can see your screen, but not the presentation.
No.
How about now?
¿No ven mi presentación allí?
No.
No vemos tu
You
pantalla,
can't see
pero
my
no vemos tu
presentation?
presentación.
No, we cannot.
Disculpen. Qué problema, porque no. Tendré que ir hablando simplemente, porque si no, no sé cómo hacer esto, disculpen.
Señor Báez, ¿me podría
Sí,
compartir a Pamela Rosero la presentación y yo la puedo compartir?
sí,
Por
sí,
email,
cómo no.
si es posible.
Muy bien, muy bien. Voy a salir de aquí entonces. Tengo que salir de, dejar de compartir. Un segundito.
Tranquilo, tranquilo. Vale.
Ok,
Perfecto.
ya,
Ahí ya
ya
se va
dejé
su
de
presentación.
compartir.
Adelante.
Bueno, voy a empezar hablando
All
mientras
right, then
envío la
I
presentación.
will begin my
Voy a
presentation
hacer esto antes.
while the
Bueno, ya me presentó, soy
other
el Julián
individual
Báez, director
shares
del
it.
Comité Regional
I am
de
Julian Baez,
Meteorología
the
América,
director of the regional
basado en
officer of the
Paraguay
World
y
Meteorological Organization for the Americas,
nuestra
with headquarters in
oficina y
Paraguay
monitoría
and
y
covering the
coordinación
entire
regional.
Latin
En esta
American,
oportunidad, la
Caribbean, and
intención
North
es
American region.
presentarles
So the purpose
el
of
estado
my
actual
presence here today is to
del
refer to the current
El
status
Niño
of the
y
El Nino
sus
phenomenon
predicciones,
and
principalmente para
forecasts for the region.
para el siguiente periodo, el siguiente trimestre.
For the upcoming quarter.
Solo para enviar la presentación, me da un segundo.
I'm sorry, I'm just working on emailing the
Disculpen por todo
presentation
este
to the assistant from FAO, and I apologize for the inconvenience.
A veces pasan estas cosas.
Don't worry, we understand. Sometimes things like this happen.
Les decía que la intención es entonces
So I was saying that
mostrarles lo
the
que
purpose of my
esperamos que
presentation
ocurra con el
is
fenómeno del
to
Niño.
show you what we
A ver,
can
ahí
expect
envié la
this
presentación, espero que puedan
upcoming quarter
verlo pronto.
from the El Nino phenomenon. I have sent out the
En la
email.
actualidad, OMM como agencia
So
especializada
today,
de las Naciones Unidas tiene a su cargo
as a UN specialized
la
agency,
observación,
we are in charge
el
of
monitoreo, el pronóstico
observing,
de los desarrollos del
monitoring, and
climático.
forecasting
En ese sentido,
climate and
con relación
weather
al
and water
El Niño, se
events.
espera que se
And
desarrolle a
we
mediados
are
de
expecting for the El
2026,
Nino
que por
to
supuesto va
make its big arrival
a bajas temperaturas
mid-year.
y precipitación.
And
En la última actualización
according to the most
estacional
recent global
mensual de la
seasonal monthly
nuestra organización,
climate
señala
data
un claro
published by our
cambio
organization,
en
we
el
have
comportamiento
seen
del
a
océano
clear
Pacífico
change
ecuatorial
in the
hacia
behavior
las
of the
temperaturas de la
Pacific
superficie del
Ocean
mar,
around the
aumentando
Ecuador.
de
We have
manera
seen an increase
acelerada
in the ocean's
y,
temperature,
por
an
supuesto,
accelerated increase,
apuntando
that is. And of
al
course, this
establecimiento de un evento El
allows
Niño
us to
este mes
see
de mayo
that,
y en
there
el
will be a
promedio
Nino from
del
May
siguiente año.
to
Los
June,
pronósticos
starting in May to June
indican
of this year. And according
un
to
fenómeno más
forecasts,
global,
we
más
will see
superficial de la superficie terrestre por encima del valor normal.
global rise of surface water for the next 3 months with global changes in precipitation patterns as well. El Niño and La Niña are two southern oscillations, mostly known as the ENSO, and this is one of the most powerful climate patterns of the planet. They modify global climate, having an impact on precipitation, drought, resulting in extreme conditions in both north and the south. The Niño is marked by a rise in the Pacific Ocean surface water temperature around the equator, and the Niño tends to go by a 5 to 7 year cycle. From the ocean perspective, the Niño is a normal heating up of the central eastern Pacific, and generally speaking, that area of the ocean tends to be quite cold. So the normal heating of the ocean alters the typical atmospheric circulation, bringing about changes in temperature and precipitation. Now, one of the most common impacts for Latin America and the Caribbean of this phenomenon, I don't know if you have received the presentation, I've sent it, and these, we have not received it yet, we apologize, but go ahead.
Bueno, voy a avanzar y lamento no tener que mostrarle las.
How unfortunate that I cannot show you the images that I prepared for the presentation, but in any event, this will be available for posterity. So the main impact of the El Niño in Latin America and the Caribbean is marked by, in general terms, intense rain, primarily along the coastal regions in the northern part of South America, specifically in Ecuador and Peru, with normal rainfall in the central and southeastern part of South America, primarily during the spring and summer months, with significant drought in the north and east of South America, near Brazil, affecting Guyana, Suriname, Colombia as well, all of Central America. And generally speaking, the impacts can be defined as a significant drought in the Caribbean region as a result of a substantial increase in hurricanes in that region, with rain that tends to be somewhat abnormal in the southern Pacific area of the US and in Florida. But essentially, in short, I would say that the impact is significant in the southeast of the US, southeast of southwest of South America, and northeast of South America. Now, the impact is homogeneous. There tends to be an increase in the average temperature throughout all of South America, Central America, and in fact, part of North America.
Now, in terms of the indicators, what do we have now? We have two types of indicators to monitor the El Niño phenomenon. One of them being temperature, sea surface temperature in the equatorial region, and especially the difference regarding the average value. Right now, according to the observations of the global network, but especially the one generated by NOAA in the United States, state that the Eastern Pacific area has higher than average temperatures. We have seen temperatures way above the average in coastal areas of Ecuador and Peru, very much connected with the coastal El Niño phenomenon. But the main interest to monitor this phenomenon and its associated impact in Latin America and the Caribbean is in the region known as Niño 3.4. That kind of overlaps in between 120 degrees west and 170 degrees west longitude, and between 5 degrees north, 5 degrees south, specifically the equatorial strip, but it's the Central Pacific area. Right now, temperature abnormality in the region shows 1 degree centigrade in the eastern coast in the South American coastal, but the El Nino 3.4, it's 0.4 degrees centigrade above the average. That is not yet considered El Nino effect or event because there are some the Oceanic Oscillation Index, and there's a new one implemented by NOAA named RONI, which is the same index but relative to that should stay above 0.5 degrees centigrade for 3 consecutive months. Right now, this process is just starting. The temperature readings, average temperatures on the sea are above the average of El Niño 3.4 region, and we hope this will remain the same for the next 6 months or even further. And for that, there are different types of forecasts developed by world climate centers, especially NOAA in the United States, the ED Institute, the Global Research Institute, also the Copernicus in Europe, UCAMET office in England. All this had to present the indicators and the forecasts of sea the abnormality of sea surface temperature in that region that I mentioned, which is the 3.4, because they all coincide, or that in the next 6 months, temperatures will be above 1.5 degrees centigrade. There's a coincidence in all these models that the temperature values will reach 2 degrees or more. That is already considered a moderate to strong El Nino effect, similar to the one we experienced in 2015 and 16. I was saying that the other index that has been used more recently is RONI, shown by, well, in the slide, unfortunately, I was going to show that to you, where we can see the Niño event years and the Niña event predominance with opposite effects. But specifically, recently, for Niño is 23, 24, from mild to moderate. The strongest that we had before that is between 2015 to 2016. And the extremes, we have one from 1997, 1998. Everything is telling us that the current forecasts, tells us that we would be facing a moderate to strong El Nino event. In that scenario, the foreseen impact, as I said at the beginning, is increased precipitation in Southeast South America, covering from northern Argentina, south of Brazil, central and south of Paraguay and Uruguay, with excess rainfall in spring and summertime, together with the potential flooding because of the increased flow rates in rivers Paraná and Paraguay, excess precipitation in the northeast, in coastal areas of Peru and Ecuador. Specifically, that's the most affected area with increased precipitation effect in that region. And our concern for South America and North America and northeastern Brazil and part of the Caribbean is the rainfall deficit, which in the case of the phenomenon back in 2015 or 2016, according to the World Food Program reports and OSHA, meant more than 3.5 million, that more than 3.5 million people that required assistance in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. As to impacts, I also had this in my presentation to show to you the impacts, the latest moderate to strong impacts in 1998 from 2002 to 2003, moderate 2015, 2016, which was very strong, and 23, 24, El Niño was strong. In all cases, the pattern that repeats is of larger rainfall in Southeast South America and Peru, Ecuador, fundamentally, also with lots of rain, and drought in the other countries that I mentioned. Impacts are very diverse. It's great to be holding this discussion because we talk about lots of economic impact and also social impacts. Finally, I'd like to leave you with a few thoughts about this El Niño event. On the one hand, just to tell you that these seasonal forecasts are always focused on reducing the impact of the changes in precipitation and temperature patterns, and the World Meteorological Organization with its regional centers that work in this field are permanently conducting some efforts in order to improve these forecasts at different timescales. This World Meteorological Organization will soon publish an update of its El Niño and La Niña bulletin with a much more certain outlook for these forecasts in June, July, August this year. Yes, yeah, I'm about to close. I have two more things to say. I just wanted to say that in the region, we have climate forecast regional fora that are supported by the climate regional centers. There are several in our region, specifically in southern, western South America, and there are other world centers that I mentioned before that are working on this on an ongoing basis. And finally, to highlight the monitoring and forecasting of hydrometeorological conditions in each country must be are being monitored by the meteorological services of these countries, and they must be consulted to be able to have a more accurate report about the impact on those countries. And thank you for your attention. Apologies for the lack of organization in my presentation due to the lack of my presentation. Thank you.
Claro que sí, señor Julián. Muchísimas gracias a usted. No se preocupe, estas cosas
Thank
pasan,
you.
entendemos, unos espacios. Todavía no hemos
We,
terminado de solucionar
we
los
understand.
eventos virtuales, pero muchísimas gracias y por supuesto que nos quedó claro. Yo creo que el
Of
mensaje
course, it
aquí
was
es
very
contundente.
clear.
Hay que seguir
We need to keep
monitoreando, hay que
monitoring.
seguir
We need
informando.
to
Tenemos
keep
todos los recursos de
reporting.
información a los boletines,
We have the resources that you
adicionalmente
mentioned, the
tenemos
different bulletins, but
diversidad
additionally, we have a diversity of impacts. associated to drought, rainfall, temperature, which means that these spaces are important. And of course, we need to talk about this and we need to be ready. Thank you again, Julian, for being with us. I'd like to welcome our regional representative. I'd like to thank René Orellana, who is the René, who are Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Latin America and the Caribbean. Please turn on your camera. We have a very important aspect. And I believe you're going to talk about something important, which is precisely how we process the information, how we can get more evidence to support countries in the preparation. Please, René, go ahead. Thank you, Tania. I'd like to greet all of you, especially Minister of Agriculture from Belize, from the National Secretary of Risk Management in Ecuador, Delval de la Rosa, Executive Secretary of the Coordination Center for Disaster Prevention in Central America and Dominican Republic, Mr. Luigi Pandolfi, the Regional Director of the Civil Protection Office for Latin America and the Caribbean, Lina Saledi, Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean of the World Food Program, Mrs. Rocio Medina Bolivar, Regional Director of Latin America and the Caribbean Division, Mr. Julian Baez, Head of the Regional Officer for the Americas of the World Meteorological Organization. And we have a very distinguished panel authorities. We are able to open up a dialogue in terms of what action we should adopt based on the experience as institutions in addressing the El Niño and La Niña phenomena. We have listened to presentation about the current forecast for 26 with potential effects towards the second half of the year. Scientific evidence that we have seen is clear, offering us the opportunity of analyzing certain scenarios and to act by making anticipatory decisions. Recent experiences show that these events do disturb rainfall patterns and temperatures, increasing droughts, and in this case causing floods, heat waves, and forestry wildfires that do affect agri-food systems and rural livelihoods. Latin America and the Caribbean concentrate 22% of overall losses caused by extreme climatic events, particularly in agriculture, equivalent to $713 million between 1991 and 2023. Added to this, important food security gaps. More than 33 million people in the region are suffering from hunger. 167 million live under food insecurity, and 181 million people cannot actually pay for a healthy diet. This, of course, will be worsened by extreme events. The situation is particularly sensitive because millions of people rely on agriculture for their existence. Strong events such as El Niño could clearly impact food and economic conditions of millions of families. To that, we see the additional risks that we're experiencing, such as the Middle East conflict, the strategic route disruption for trade that are affecting the world fertilizer market, increasing costs and causing price volatility in food. From FAO, together with several partners that are present, we have driven actions that combine technical assistance, territorial presence, and institutional articulation to be able to support the countries in the face of crises like these that can become humanitarian emergencies. Our vision is to connect science, innovation, public policy, and operational action in order to provide structural actions that can prevent these scenarios and their impacts.
This vision also involves strengthening countries' capacity to take risk-related information and turn it into investment-related decisions by way of different approaches such as the hand-in-hand initiative. We're actually working closely with governments on closing critical gaps and ensuring that there are enabling conditions to limit vulnerabilities and thus build resilient territories. We have emergency and resilience-related tests and initiatives, and we support the countries by identifying the critical enabling investment gaps aimed at reducing vulnerabilities before the crises are further exacerbated. Now, in Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, we're working closely. This is one of the areas that is most affected by El Niño. We strengthened the agricultural resilience through SARC tool. We conducted a mapping of highly vulnerable regions to extreme climate events. We worked with the governments and other institutions so that they may prevent conditions that will have a significant impact. This effort was supported by FAO and WFP, ministries of agriculture from the countries involved, as well as the Brazilian Cooperation Agency. And during the Niño 23-24 period, with financial partners and other governments, we provided support for the governments in Nicaragua, Peru, Venezuela, El Salvador, and other countries. We provided support for the local offices to prepare for El Niño. Now, these actions made it possible for us to provide benefits to more than 100,000 families in rural communities through transfers, water rehab systems, the installation of irrigation systems, as well as building local capacity and other support activities. The local communities were able to reinforce their food systems and limit losses. In some areas, the corn and bean production was boosted by 40% thanks to these initiatives. Globally, from 2023 to 2024, the anticipatory actions amounted to 1.7 million individuals supported, with an average return of $3 per every dollar invested. However, in order to ensure sustainability, anticipatory actions cannot rely on isolated projects, but rather must be incorporated into national systems and regional risk management systems and policies. In this regard, FAO supports governments through technical assistance in order to specifically embed these actions through regulatory frameworks to include evidence-based decision-making based on mapping and other types of information that I just recently mentioned in terms of the impact of extreme events. One of our well-known joint efforts through the World Food Program and the German Red Cross was held out in South America, working on strengthening regional and national risk management systems. In some areas, in 2025 through 2030, in some areas there was efforts to institutionalize anticipatory action for the 2030 period, and this is also in keeping with the Sendai framework and the Paris Accord. Many of these actions were reaffirmed at the regional conference held in Brazil with more than 27 ministers present, where we actually addressed anticipatory act. Likewise, we are promoting intergovernmental cooperation spaces on the global platform for disaster risk management. There is an intergovernmental initiative involving 12 intergovernmental institutions for anticipatory action. We're actually joined by some of these organizations today. We have made monitoring analysis and early alert tools available to the countries to this end. There's this global food and agricultural alert program as well. We have also provided technical platforms, Agua Cast, Agua Prop, and the drought monitoring platforms available to the countries. These platforms include maps and socioeconomic information, food-related information, agriculture-related weather information, etc., all to carry out evidence-based actions. We should strengthen technical and political capacity in an ongoing fashion in order to reduce the impacts prior to the worsening of these emergencies. The global FAO Resilience and Emergency Plan framework involves resources to support anticipatory action protocols. Jointly with the World Food Program, we also have made progress in terms of preparatory action for El Niño, supporting those countries with a greater humanitarian need. Also, with the IFAD, we have worked on expanding rural investments to reinforce resilience of small producers. Now, one of the challenges is not the lack of capital, but rather the perception, and we also think it's important to provide greater access to rural producers to funding. Now, we have gone from a dynamic of investing response to investing in risk management and risk prevention with a combination of resilience, strengthening, and other activities through the IFAD and other organizations. Now, the purpose of this discussion, and with this I would like to conclude, is that with the WFP and IFAD, we will continue to work together in a coordinated fashion to manage risk, protect lives and livelihoods, and to reinforce the resilience of the agri-food systems. Thank you very much. Thank you for those remarks. Thank you for everything that you have mentioned with regard to science, innovation, evidence-based decisions, technical assistance, and anticipation. Very important to be ahead of the game. Thank you for mentioning the importance of resilience and how we need to do more to support the populations. Allow me to invite someone who can talk about that, and that is the Regional Director of IFAD, Ms. Rocio Medina Bolivar. Please turn on your camera so that we may see you, and welcome to this discussion. I understand you'll be referring to building resilience of rural populations against climate shocks. Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Renee. You helped me with the standard protocols. But in any event, greetings to Renee, Lena, my fellow panelists, and it's great to see you, Minister Ferguson. It's been a while since we saw each other in Belize, and Julian as well. Thank you for your remarks. Renee and Julian referred to how we will be experiencing a quite intense Niño in mid-2026. This will be reminiscent of what happened in 2015, 2016, with a drought in the dry corridor region in the Caribbean, with significant rains in the Andean region, with climate variability as well that will be quite intense. And the first individuals who will suffer from all of this will be the small-scale producers. We know they contribute a significant percentage to the food available in the region, and they're not all so well prepared to absorb a poor harvest. And it's very complicated for them when the Niño hits. We know that they're already facing high fuel costs, high fertilizer costs as a result of the Middle East crisis. And again, this Niño represents represents a risk factor for their production scenario. And the IFAD is specifically working on building greater long-term and mid-term resilience, as we're the only international organization that is actually working on that with rural populations. So our role is to invest in the production basis and the institutions that will allow the rural families to absorb these climate shocks without losing what they have built thus far. In Latin America and in the Caribbean, this currently translates into 25 active projects in 13 different countries throughout the region, where we have mobilized more than $2.5 million through IFAD resources and resources from other partners. Our investments really focus on where we see the greatest vulnerability and marginalized populations and fragile communities and indigenous communities. Practically speaking, this means that we work through 4 key areas that converge and combine infrastructure and resources. And of course, we know that the climate events are increasingly more extreme. We provide nature-based solutions such as agroforestry solutions, the basin management, and others. The idea is to retain water, reduce erosion, and to stabilize production in dry years as well as intense rainfall years. Now, the idea is to come up with green, resilient infrastructure that will reduce climate variability and will link small producers up with markets. This involves combining physical work, such as irrigation works and others, with ecosystem conservation and preservation, so that the actual products can be efficiently and safely and securely brought to market, regardless of the climate events. And we also allow for providing them timely climate and meteorological related information, so that the production related decisions as to when to harvest, when to sow, when to manage water, how to best manage water will be based on early warnings and forecasts, and with local knowledge, with a better understanding of demand and the better opportunities that the market can provide. We also provide these individuals with services to investments, and so that they can better protect their investments and preserve their market ties after a poor harvest, and to ensure that they will not have to go further into debt. Now, what is the Latin American example is an excellent example of what we have done. We have 15 operations in Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, and other areas. Now, we have this profile, this portfolio, where we have provided great support to rural families living in the most fragile regions of areas of the region. This allows for us to restore water recharge areas, to have water harvest and irrigation systems that are resilient. And also, IFAD has a strong presence in the Andean region, which will be one of the most affected regions by El Niño. The portfolio includes projects in the rural, poorest areas of Bolivia and Peru, with a view to reinforce the resilience of rural populations. In Peru, we have a project called Avanza Peru that will help to secure the adaptation and mitigation capacities of a variety of different communities. And out of this total, more than 12,000 recipients or beneficiaries are women. A large number are youth as well, and this is key. Now, through better management of natural resources and promoting more diversified and sustainable production systems, this project has allowed to reduce their vulnerability in the face of extreme precipitation and drought and other climatic events, thereby contributing to greater food security and rural livelihoods.
Besides loans, FIDA also supports rural families to be protected against climate shocks. This means developing allowing small producers to recover from losses without losing assets and coming into debt. In Guatemala, through the Insure program, if FIDA supports in collaboration with the PMA, the operationalization insurance that is accessible and useful for those that produce in high climatic vulnerability context, and to strengthen the capabilities of the Ministry of Agriculture in this field. What our three agencies it's supplementary. In El Niño does require this because it does evidence telling us where acts as a first line in the days and weeks around the shock. Long-term investment sets the difference between a household that requires humanitarian aid and another that absorbs a bad season, but will be recovered. Besides investments, they increase high exposure and becomes an enabling condition so that the private capital that is so important can operate with more trust. Please allow me to close with one last thought. Preventive action and investing on resilience is not only the right thing to do from the development point of view, but is the most efficient option. Each dollar invested can generate $7 in losses that are avoided. Investing in the long term in the rural communities and strengthen the capabilities is a key to adapt to the future impacts and continue to create events in the region and the world. Building resilience means to create better jobs, expanding opportunities, and improve the quality of life in our rural territories. IFAD will continue to invest and count on us to continue furthering this rural transformation in coordination with FAO, the World Food Program, that our objective is to build that resilience in rural populations and to sustainably reduce their exposure to more frequent climatic risk. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Director.
La
Thank you very much.
clasificación en resiliencia es la clave.
Investing on
Todo eso
resilience
y
is the key
específicamente
in
en
all
el
of this,
mundo
and
se
of course, even
análisis
better if it
estructural,
is in
esa
rural
infraestructura,
areas. Infrastructure,
local,
prognosis, local knowledge, diversification, financing.
Muchísimas
Uh,
gracias y por
we're
supuesto toda
left
la
with that, of course.
complementariedad
Thank you
que es
very much.
necesaria
And
hacia la
also
humanidad.
the work
Terminamos
of
y vamos a terminar. Entonces,
IFAD,
esa
the
sesión pueden mostrar
WFP,
todos los
and
nuevos modelos de
FAO.
alimentos.
Uh,
Lena Sabelli,
Thank you,
adelante.
Lena
Gracias por
Savelli.
permitirnos
Please go
utilizar
ahead. I
las
know you're
cámaras.
with us.
Les vamos a
Please turn
hablar
on your
justamente de
camera.
preparación y respuesta,
Uh,
pero algo muy
uh,
importante.
Something
¿Cómo
very
vinculamos
important,
eso
how
con los
we connect
sistemas
this
de
with
protección social?
the social protection
Adelante, Lena,
systems
muchas gracias.
in the
Madre,
field of
consigo.
preparedness, actions, and response. Please go
Muchas
ahead,
gracias,
Lena.
Tania, y
Thank you,
buenos
Tanya,
días con todos y
and
todas. Buenas tardes
thank you
también
all.
a
Good morning, good
nuestros
afternoon,
colegas y
because
socios
I
desde
know we
Roma y
have
en
colleagues
línea.
collected from Rome as well.
Excelencias, estimados ministros y
Excellencies, dear
autoridades,
ministries and
distinguidos
authorities,
representantes de
distinguished
organizaciones regionales e
representatives of
internacionales,
regional and
miembros y
international
misiones
organizations, and of
voluntarias
course,
de
my
las Naciones
dear colleagues
Unidas,
from United
René,
Nations,
Rocío y
Rene,
Julián,
Rocio, and
gracias por
also
sus
Julian. Thank you so much
intervenciones.
for
Muchas
your kind
gracias a
remarks.
todos por
Thank you
acompañarnos
all
en
for
este
being
importante
with us
diálogo que realmente se
in the middle
sitúa en
of
un
this
momento
very important
crítico
dialogue that is
para
taking
nuestra
place at a
región, ¿no?
critical moment for our region.
Como hemos escuchado
As we
hoy
have
en la
heard
presentación de
today
Julián sobre el
in Julian's
pronóstico de El
presentation
Niño,
about the
esto confirma
forecast
lo que
of El
ya
Nino, this
estamos viendo
confirms what
suceder.
we already see
En las
about this
últimas
trend
semanas he tenido la
in the
oportunidad de
field.
visitar
Lately, I've
varios
been able
países en
to
la
visit
región,
several countries in
tanto
the
en
region,
Sudamérica como en
both in South
Centroamérica,
America as well
y
as in
ahí se
Central
nota que las
America. And
autoridades ya
there's
están
evidence that
empezando a
communities are
sentir el impacto
already feeling the
por
impact
sequías o
with
inundaciones
droughts
y que
or
esto
because
genera
of floods, and this
incertidumbre
creates
y preocupación.
uncertainty and concern.
Pero no estamos
But
esperando
we
que
are
nuestra
not
comunidad sienta los
expecting for the
efectos
communities
para
to
actuar.
feel
Estamos
the
siendo
effects to
proactivos,
act. We are
proponiendo
being
soluciones
proactive,
locales
promoting
y
local
acciones
solutions and
colectivas
also
para
collective action in
anticiparnos
order
a El
to
Niño.
anticipate El
Y
Nino.
este webinar regional
And this regional
especialmente
webinar is
ejemplo
really
de ello
one
y también
example of
un
that, and
ejemplo de la
also
voluntad del
an
gobierno de
example of
trabajar
the
con
welfare programs
ustedes en
will to
una
work with you
respuesta integral.
on a comprehensive
Y en este
response.
contexto,
And in this context, I'd like to first thank the governments in the region for supporting us today, because you are at the center of this agenda through your social protection systems that are already key elements in the preparation and that will be absolutely necessary when the time comes to provide a response, because in the face of adversity, social protection promotes equality and fosters inclusion. And these public systems become even more relevant and important when there is a shock like this, and more people fall into the field of food insecurity. And as we have heard in today's presentation from the World Meteorological Organization, extreme climatic events will continue to exist, and even more frequently now, and even stronger than before. And this is important. However, we can prevent them from triggering humanitarian crisis. And of course, the World Food Program being a humanitarian agency, this has been a priority in the last few years, and now I'm going to talk about what we've been doing in that regard. We are really addressing humanitarian responses by combining insurance, credit, and digital financial services. And we help governments and also communities to withstand droughts, floods, and storms. And together with our partners, we are working so the social protection systems will not leave anyone behind, so that communities can ensure can be certain that they will receive support as soon as early alerts, early warning are triggered, and not having to wait until the impact has ended. At the same time, preparedness is as sound or solid as the information that guides it, and therefore early warning systems are so essential, because they allow governments to act guided by evidence swiftly and with confidence in what they're doing. One very important example is what we have been doing together with the government of the Dominican Republic, where we have supported in setting up the geospatial analysis platform, Anacaona, that turns meteorological information and social protection records into information that allows them to anticipate and to respond to emergencies. And this is what allows us to go from preparedness to anticipatory action, so we can actually act even before the most critical moment. And as Rocio just said, evidence is clear. It is much cheaper to work on prevention and to work early. Each dollar invested on anticipatory action may actually create may allow avoiding $7 in losses in Latin America and the Caribbean, in supporting the governments. And together with our partners from FAO, IFAD, the World Food Program has activated the anticipatory action 16 times in different countries, helping protect more than 700,000 people before the emergency strikes. And this year, we are already applying these approaches because of the foreseen drought that El Niño may cause. And I'd like to mention now that the anticipatory action in Central America demonstrates the impact of a coordinated response from the United Nations system. And this has been thanks to instruments such as the SURF, which is the emergency fund that provides funding that is prearranged, that allows us to act before the crisis intensifies. So we have already activated anticipatory responses by reaching certain meteorological thresholds that indicate the risk of water scarcity in these countries, for example. And today, more than 76,000 people are already preparing by having access to monetary transfers, practical messages, and the follow-up of the information coming from meteorological stations. One One distinguished example is Belize, where for the first time anticipatory money transfers were set up in response to insufficient rainfall, being a landmark in the region, which is a major resource. That's why it's so nice to have the presence of the minister in this dialogue. These efforts were strengthened through collaboration between World Food Program, the German Red Cross, and the World Food Program in Guatemala, El Salvador. Thank you, Luigi, as well for being with us today. ECHO has worked with us in order to drive this agenda, and we have now started institutionalizing these approaches by connecting anticipatory action with social protection systems. In order to achieve the scale, the regional coordination is key, and I'd like to recognize also CEPREDENAC's leadership. Their work allows us to strengthen preparedness, truly regional preparedness and coordination among countries in the face of those risks that go beyond borders. We'd like to thank CEPREDENAC for being today with us as well. We continue to work with governments and other partners to expand the coverage of climate insurance work at all levels with farmers, municipalities, and countries in the midst of stronger and stronger climatic shocks. In 2025, insurance schemes at World Food Program almost covers 315,000 people in the region, and this paid $44 million in insurance benefits. And good news is that this year, for the first time, we have activated a policy in the Cobija municipality of Bolivia to protect their population in the face of flood risk. Ecuador, and greetings, kind greetings to the authorities from Ecuador. Ecuador is also taking concrete steps to go from reactive response to anticipatory funding and financing, and also risk-informed investment. And national authorities as well as local authorities are working in order to start a specific fund for disaster risk management, a type of funding that will allow to mobilize resources before a climatic shock happens, by enabling, therefore, more foreseeable and timely responses. And at the same time, in Guatemala, together with IFAD, the Welfare Program is expanding insurance solutions and also helping to institutionalize these instruments with the Ministry of Agriculture in order to protect vulnerable populations and to strengthen resilience in time. But of course, we know that in the face of such large crisis, humanitarian aid will continue to be essential. And in those contexts, the World Food Program will continue to provide food support according to scale, while we also foster long-term resilience and recovery. In 2025, the World Food Program helped 8.6 million people in the region with monetary transfers and technical support. Just in closing, a simple message to everyone. I believe we're all on the same page in the sense that no stakeholder, no specific government or UN agency or donor by themselves can respond in isolation to the complexity of the climatic context. That's why collaboration among agencies based in Rome, the World Food Program, IFAD, and FAO is a strategic need. But most of all, we need to continue to work together with the governments in the region that are already showing their significant commitment to this anticipatory climate action and social protection agenda. By combining our strengths, our mandates, we can connect food security, livelihoods, preparedness, resilience, social protection, and risk financing on a single and consistent path. Thank you very much for being with us this morning, and we'll be very interested in hearing our panelists, and therefore we can continue to work together to offer solutions that will enable us to anticipate, prepare, and to respond to disasters and climatic events in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. The UN agencies are the most effective organizations to support the governments. Now, we have just heard from the three directors with regard to the strategic lines of action in this area. So thank you so much for your remarks, and thank you for organizing as well this event. Thank your organizations, because we clearly have to work together for the well-being of the region. Now, it's important to take into consideration other perspectives, other standpoints, and other actions, approaches, etc. To that end, we will hear from a variety of different representatives in terms of what they are doing to prepare for this event, which leads me to the high-level panel discussion, which is very interesting. And again, I would just like to take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us far and wide from around the globe. Thank you for being present here today. Allow me to now begin the last section of this discussion. We will have 4 speakers. The first speaker will be giving the presentation in English, so I am going to change into English, and then we will go back to Spanish. So it's just important to remind you that we have simultaneous interpreting services, and on the bottom of your screen, you just need to click onto the More symbol to access the simultaneous interpreting services.
Minister of Agriculture of Belize, Honorable Rodwell Ferguson. We are so pleased to have you here with us. I'll just please switch on your camera. It is important to start having this conversation, and thank you so much to be here with us today. I just have a question to begin with. Can you please, I cannot see you. Can you please switch on your camera? You did. Okay, you did. I just want to start with this first question, Minister. Let's start. From Belize's perspective, what are the most urgent risks that El Niño poses to food systems and livelihoods? And how is the government prioritizing preparedness and early action to mitigate these impacts? Over to you, Minister. And again, welcome to this space.
Good morning from Belize. I see some of those faces back in Brazil some months ago. So we are here today again to make our presentation. The government of Belize welcomes the opportunity to participate in this important regional roundtable and the impacts of El Niño and the response in Latin America and the Caribbean. Belize recognizes that climate variability and extreme weather events continue to pose significant threats to food security, water resources, agriculture production, livelihoods, infrastructure, and national economic stability. As a climate vulnerable country, Belize remains committed to strengthening preparedness, improving anticipatory action systems, and advancing comprehensive disaster risk management approaches that enhance national and community resilience. The impacts of El Niño over the years have increasingly affected Belize. Belize had extreme drought conditions in 2019 and 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, and based on the current forecast and seasonal weather outlook for 2026, certain parts of Belize are already under drought watch and drought warning. This situation is compounded by the impacts of high fuel prices currently caused by the geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. The ENSO conditions have caused reduced rainfall and water shortages. It has increased temperatures and heat stress. It has put pressure on Belize's livestock systems and pasture availability. Increased wildlife risk primarily in the south, which affects our cocoa plantations and milpa grains production. And it has threatened the food and nutrition security, particularly in vulnerable rural communities. These impacts place additional pressure on smallholder farmers, national food systems, rural economies, and public resources. Belize has developed a comprehensive disaster risk financing policy and implementation plan 2025 to 2030. Considering the legal and institutional framework for disaster risk management and financing. The legal framework for disaster risk management and focuses on preparedness, response, and resource mobilization during emergencies. The government of Belize is currently working on multi-sectoral national adaptation plan, which includes agriculture, health, water and fisheries, and coastal zone and tourism. These strategic policy documents will provide a management framework that goes beyond emergency response and will incorporate prevention and mitigation, preparedness planning, early warning systems, anticipatory actions, recovery and resilience building, and climate adaptation strategies. As a government, we believe that effective disaster risk management requires strong interagency coordination, evidence-based planning, community engagement, and regional collaboration. Belize will continue to strengthen coordination among national institutions responsible for agriculture, emergency management, water resources, climate services, and rural development to improve response readiness and resilience. As a country, we see several important opportunities to improve preparedness and anticipatory actions systems. From an agricultural point of view, we see the need for improvements in strengthening early warning systems, such as enhancing climate and weather forecasting capabilities, and improving dissemination of timely information to farmers and vulnerable communities. 2, promoting climate-smart agriculture. 3, building community resilience. 4, enhancing regional cooperation, such as sharing technical expertise and best practices across the region, as we are doing here today. 5, Belize will be piloting agriculture insurance in the sugar sector, primarily in the north of the country of Belize. Let me acknowledge once again the presence of WFP, IFAD, IFAD, and FAO, whom we have a very good and close working relationship with. Some farmers are currently receiving cash transfer from WFP due to the condition below, rainfall which has triggered the anticipatory action payout. Despite ongoing efforts, Belize and many other small island states in the region continues to face important challenges such as limited financial resources for adaptation and preparedness investments, technical and institutional capacity constraints, infrastructure vulnerabilities in rural and agricultural communities, increasing frequency and severity of climate-related events, limited access to advanced climate technologies and forecasting tools, and the high costs associated with resilience building initiatives. These challenges highlight the need for continued international cooperation and support for small island and vulnerable developing states. As Belize's way forward, we will continue to strengthen national resilience and climate adaptation measures, advance sustainable and climate resilient food systems, enhance disaster preparedness, and anticipatory action frameworks, support vulnerable populations and rural livelihoods, and promote regional solidarity and collaborative action. The government of Belize believes that productive investment in preparedness and resilience today will significantly reduce humanitarian, social, and economic losses in the future. In closing, I want to make mention that while we concentrate on a certain part of the country between the west and the north for drought, it has now been extended to the south of the country in terms of the conditions. And especially in the Toledo district, when there's a drought and the dry season, many farmers lose their crop due to fire. So if there can be some consideration for the next period, that would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
Minister, many thanks to you. And I had another question for you, but you actually already answered that because I wanted to ask you, so very good. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you about critical investments and partnership, but you actually already mentioned the need for more time, infrastructure, climate smart tools, sharing good practices, insurances, forecasting tools, so many things. And you also mentioned the support provided by the three agencies. Many thanks for that. I think it's a real clear presentation of what is the situation, what is the impact, but also how the government is preparing legal frameworks, but also a coordination within the government and receiving also this support from the international community. Minister, I appreciate so much, and we really appreciate, I'm so grateful for having you here in this space. Please stay with us. We want to have more other perspectives and views from other governments and other actors in the regions. But we wanted to start with you. Thank you so much. Please stay with us, and thank you also to your team that I can see from here. Okay, I will switch off to Spanish again. So please be aware of the interpretation because I will switch to Spanish. Muchísimas gracias. Entonces escuchamos al ministro de Agricultura.
Well, thank you. We just heard from the Minister of Agriculture from Belize with some general comments with regard to how the country is getting prepared for El Niño and how the government has also coordinated with the three regions, the three organizations present here today. Now, allow me to give the floor to Amanda Rivera from the Government of Ecuador's Emergency Preparedness and Management Department. We have some questions for you, Carmen Amanda. The first one is, what is Ecuador doing to strengthen its risk management systems to prepare for and respond to El Niño impacts? For example, what types of anticipatory actions are you taking? Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to speak here today. Greetings from our minister as well. And greetings to the authorities joining us here today and the panelists from the various countries and the audience joining us virtually as well. Allow me to mention that in Ecuador, we are transforming our national disaster risk management system based on this concept of preparedness. And we know it's not just about responding better and responding in a timely fashion, but rather we need to have a more robust technical foundation so that we can be prepared and act before the events take place. In this regard, we recognize the importance of anticipatory actions, specifically for vulnerable communities and specifically regarding certain phenomena such as El Niño. We know that on a regular basis, our country is exposed to a variety of different threats, and the impacts tend to show up in terms of mass removal or displacement events or flooding, and scientific forecasts and evaluations allow us to have information so that we can take better and more timely decisions.
We have conducted investments in developing an early warning system in the country for volcano eruptions and tsunamis. But this whole system is being strengthened through a specific project with IDB, which is the early warning strengthening system in the face of multiple threats. What's important in this project is that it not only is investing on those organizations that develop first response, but in all organizations, especially technical and scientific organizations that provide the information, and we need to have studies to improve their equipment and to improve the forecast through monitoring different threats in the country. That is to say, we intend to do a better forecasting, to anticipate better. Now, facing this next El Niño event, we are building the National Action Plan in the face of El Niño event that is built by all institutions that are part of the National Emergency Committee in the country. The plan is based on creating impact scenarios. So that is to say, what we're looking for is to understand how these impacts are set up based on the construction of certain thresholds that will allow us to make anticipatory decisions. This is a key plan because, in fact, all sectors are impacted frequently during the rainy season. That's how we call it. And when it's coupled with El Niño event, well, these impacts are exacerbated. And in turn, in the country, in regions, we can have effects due to floods. But in other regions, the impact may be because of drought. So this means that we need to strengthen our social protection systems that are active in the face of these emergencies. This year, we have foreseen more than $8 million investment in providing contingency bonuses, which is an activation of the social protection mechanisms. At the same time, besides strengthening our warning systems and anticipatory action systems, we also have an early warning for all, which is a strategic platform for the country. Ecuador is one of the first countries that has been prioritized worldwide, and we have this historical opportunity for all people, getting to this goal that all people are protected under an early warning system. And this will be done by aligning our structure of our system to the early warning mechanisms. These changes or this step towards anticipatory action is also coupled by an advisory group made up by Practical Action, Red Cross, OSHA, FAO, and other institutions that allows to build, we're building technical instruments such as an anticipatory guideline in order to institutionalize and to look at these challenges that as a country can focus on anticipatory action. We don't want for anticipatory action to only be an aspiration, but really the idea is for it to be translated into mechanisms such as monetary transfers, cautionary evacuation, resource allocation, and the logistics that will have to be ready before the events become materialized. We have several platforms as well that are connected with our policy-making efforts. An important platform is the Risk Reduction National Platform that has been, of course, a significant support in international cooperation. the national anticipatory action platforms have been developed nationally. Locally, there's important work with local autonomous governments, but also through community committees, because we understand that the basis of the preparation is the community, is the families, the households, and the individuals. And with this, of course, the intent is to have actual cooperation tools that allows to reduce these losses and to reduce the humanitarian needs locally. Finally, all these actions are based on a sound piece of legislation that started back in 2024 to make our system more robust. As we have heard, by anchoring all disaster risk management approaches with this objective of reducing these humanitarian needs and, of course, to save lives. Thank you.
No, muchísimas gracias a ti
Thank you
tu intervención
for
y
your
esa reflexión
remarks.
así
So we
marabunta,
are
¿no?
here in the context of legal frameworks. Lots of preparation relates to legal frameworks, such as the government of Belize, and now in your case from Ecuador, are telling us a very important sentence was that to better forecast in order to better anticipate and triggering or activation. You mentioned that, and our directors and FAO representatives and connecting with systems and activation in order to connect with the social protection system. Thank you, Amanda, for giving us your vision and to discuss what's local, because this happens in the territories locally. And I'd like to offer the floor now to our next discussion. Thank you, Amanda. Please stay with us. We are about to close our webinar, so we can and having everybody's perspective in terms of how we get ready in the region to address El Nino. I'd like to continue now with this view from a regional point of view, a regional mechanism point of view, because this is how we realize that not only affecting territories, it doesn't affect a single country, and it's not done the same everywhere. So how can we coordinate ourselves regionally? I'd like to welcome now Mr. Aderbal de la Rosa. Are you there, Aderbal? Yes, you are on the screen. Executive Secretary of CEPRENAC. I'm going to explain the acronym Centro de Coordinación para la Prevención de Desastres en América Central y la República Dominicana. Thank you for being with us again in this space. Well, we need to talk about the preparedness for El Nino. Given the cross-border nature of El Nino impacts, how can regional platforms such as the one you represent can strengthen the collaboration among countries in order to improve preparedness and response? Welcome. Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone and thank all the organizations such as the WFP, IFAD, or FAO. The idea is to talk here about how from the region we can address this. And I'd like to tell you that El Nino is not new in Central America, of course. First, this is an impact that we've been experiencing over the years, and specifically in the Central American dry corridor, a scenario that has been widely studied and impacted with several experiences of how three countries such as Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador have been working, and Nicaragua as well. And their effect translate not only into El Nino, but this translates into the fact that into wildfires, water scarcity, agricultural losses, and livestock losses, increased food prices, economic losses. Also, governments will have to make an effort to cover that space. There's also an investment to be made by the governments and also households, which is very important, of course. So that translates not only regarding humanitarian response, but a multi-sectorial response. And this is what's important in the multi-sectorial work, which is talking about the Central American integration system. Facing these complex scenarios, regional coordination provides us with a very important option, which is to articulate the different secretariats that exist, such as for risk management, climate change, or water resources secretariat, which is the scientific and technical component, the one on the food security, the one on agriculture, the one on healthcare, the one on economics, social protection. All this architecture that SICA handles it's an ongoing effort to address this phenomenon because we're talking about the Niño here. CEPRE de NACA keeps an articulation role and technical leadership within SICA that also offers risk-based information and articulation through what spaces? Anticipatory action. We have heard a lot about anticipatory action so far. I'd like to tell you in this case that CEPRE has the first regional strategy on anticipatory action that was adopted by the Council of Representatives at CEPRE that is also already showing results because there's a whole team that has been articulated with the presence of the governments of El Salvador and Honduras, and we hope countries will continue to further this institutionalization of anticipatory action in the different countries in Central America. And this is important because the vision of anticipatory action is not just to react, not to just to be ready, is to have a kind of a foresight type of action, such as in the case of El Niño phenomenon. Now in the Central American Forum, we had for risk for the second time, we connected the risk directors with the ministers of economics and finance of the different countries. A vision that they approved was a regional strategy for the reduction of financial impacts and disaster risk management. The investment in reducing the risk on the part of the important countries because we are acquiring debt to respond, and that creates a financial impact on countries, and also talking about for comprehensive fire management. It's a strategy that already exists and that we are working together, and they were working on it at the level of the different sectors. It's also important that the importance that already has, which is the number of instruments allows us to, based on the logic in reacting, looking at a more preventive and foresight based on risk scenarios. This means that we have clearer protocols, also timely financing and agreed upon preventive action, not to wait, not to let the storm arrive and then to react. Definitely, in the face of the El Niño phenomenon, the regional strength is based on our capability and SICA's strength. In the case of CEPRE as an articulator in disaster risk management. And the different mechanisms that already exist at SICA to make timely decisions and concrete action by reducing losses, protecting livelihoods, strengthening resilience of our population, and not only regionally, but also to support the national articulations that are already starting to appear in each country in order to have
Muchísimas gracias por este panorama.
Thank you very much. I have several things, in fact, several things, but something is very interesting in all architecture within SICA to support precisely the countries, but not only to support them in each one of their areas, but to institutionalize the example of institutionalized anticipatory action, but also how to attract the stakeholders, finance and risk management to talk about what's coming. Aderval, thank you very much for being with us today and provide us with that regional perspective. The invitation is to stay with us. We have our last discussion and our last intervention. of a very important partner in the region. That will give us the perspective from the point of view of donors. I'd like to invite, therefore, Luigi Pandolfi. He's been connected with us for a while already. He is the regional director of ECHO, which is the Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Department of the European Commission. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Luigi. And just in closing this, we need to close after listening to the broad interventions. I'd like to ask you the following question. From the ECHO perspective, what are the key priorities to guarantee timely responses and in the face of El Niño? And please be welcome again. Thank you, colleagues and authorities and partners. First of all, from ECHO, we believe that the priority is that you cannot deal El Niño as a cyclical disturbance. El Niño is part of a new climatic reference base with vulnerabilities, structural vulnerabilities, such as food security, displacement, violence, humanitarian risk. Therefore, for us, is not only about the intensity of a single climatic event, but the accumulation of climatic disturbances in the long term and the gradual erosion of response capabilities in terms of investment. For a effective response, it is key to consider the analysis and the threat analysis in an anticipatory fashion that should be based on evidence and also considering regional and sub-regional scenarios.
Therefore, it is important to have mechanisms that provide effective response to threats that also take into consideration the potential consequences of El Niño. And we have supported and will continue to support early warning systems for El Niño. We also have the European Union Analytical Services, which is part of the EFCC, the Center for Emergency Response of Europe. We also have the possibility of activating the Copernicus Emergency Service, supported by satellite imagery. I'm quite sure that all of the colleagues present here today are familiar with the Copernicus system. Now, at present, the prevention capacities have improved significantly over recent years. Both the national and international systems can now provide timely warnings in a more reliable fashion. Therefore, we believe that the challenge is no longer the lack of information or an effective response, but rather the challenge lies in how can we best ensure that this information will trigger early warning actions. And then it's also important to secure a clear functional coordination mechanism. And this involves reinforcing what exists and respecting the national authorities. Now, we know that it's important to prioritize practical coordination without creating parallel structures. We can also provide support for coordination through European civil protection mechanisms, for example, that may provide support to the countries affected by disaster, support in the form of humanitarian response or disaster-related experts. We also believe it's essential to secure the anticipatory response capacity or immediate response of previously identified partners. So this would involve identifying well-prepared territorial partners, providing them with resources and so that they may act in advance. We are working with mapping the necessary available human resources to do so. So generally speaking, the regional response continues to be quite reactive. And anticipatory action, in our opinion, should be expanded significantly through support by other donors and local governments. Now, it was just recently mentioned by the director of the the World Food Program, that the surf has been activated as in El Salvador and Honduras and Guatemala, and this was also supplemented by actions through national governments. And the support of national governments is crucial. The governments should continue to be on the cutting edge of this effort with support from other humanitarian organizations. And in the end, ECHO, with regard to the anticipatory response, has provided support with regard to an approach that is what we call the no regret approach, which provides priority to those areas that are most impacted while maintaining at the same time flexible response mechanisms. I also believe that in terms of there's just a message here for our donors. The message is to continue moving forward that no regret approach. In conclusion, for us, ECHO's response involves support for social protection systems that may have the capacity to expand during events. So therefore, we support anticipatory action and how this is tied to social protection systems that would be sensitive to shocks. Now, in order to provide support for this and for national mechanisms, well, this should continue to be a priority, that is, and ECHO will continue to support these efforts in Central America, throughout all of Latin America, in fact, along with other partners such as FAO, WFP, and IFAD. Clearly, what the donors can do, the humanitarian aid donors can do, is limited. Therefore, it's important for us to work together to include under our plans of action International Development Bank support, or work with international financial institutions as well. I think that I will stop my remarks here by saying that in the end, the Niño is not a surprise, and response systems are living organisms. And we believe that we are all here to support each other, and we are supporting those governments who will be on the front line responding to the extreme climate events. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's a pleasure to be involved in this discussion and take part in the panel. I hope my remarks were interesting. Thank you. Yes, of course, they were very interesting. Thank you. And we are actually closing our webinar. So thank you with those final remarks regarding investing in adaptable response systems. Thank you for this mentioning this non-regret approach. And we have more information that is to be better prepared and in advance. So thank you so much for that, Luigi. I would like to quickly thank every individual who has joined us here this morning. Julian Baez Benitez from the World Meteorological Organization, and of course the General Director and Regional Representative for the LAC region of FAO, Renee Orellana. Thank you to Rocio Medina Bolivar as well, the Regional Director of the Latin American Caribbean Division of the IFAD, and Lina Sabelli, the Regional Director of the WFP, as well as thank you to Minister Rodwell Ferguson from Belize, Carmen Amanda Rivera as well from Ecuador, Derval de la Rosa from CEPRENAC, referring to regional coordination. And of course, we wrapped up our panel discussion with ECHO and Luigi's remarks. So thank you to everyone who has joined us here today. thank you to the FAO, WFP, IFAD teams who contribute a great deal to organizing this event. And the message is that we have to do more, do better, and get busy, basically, because the Niño is about to arrive, and we know that many communities will be impacted. So again, thank you on behalf of the FAO, myself. We would like to thank you for this, and thank you for the invitation. We can continue to do more. The agencies are ready, and we will continue to provide you with future invitations to this type of event. Once again, thank you, and we will be in touch. Have an excellent
Verónica vive en la zona altiplánica de Bolivia. Su familia se dedica a la cría de alpacas y llamas desde hace 60 años.
Tengo 23 años, soy de la comunidad de Yoñacota. En el ailo viven de la ganadería. Nosotros vendemos como la alpaca, la llama, la oveja. También esquilan también y entonces venden sus prenditas. Vendemos, tejen, es buena calidad. Con eso vivimos, tanto la carne. Cuando le carnean, vendemos también esa carne.
El cambio climático ha incrementado las sequías, heladas intensas y granizadas, lo que ha disminuido la esperanza de vida de los animales. Si bien los animales están acostumbrados a vivir en temperaturas frías, sufren si hay fuertes vientos o si no hay refugio.
Más antes, cuando no teníamos proyecto, las llamas en tema del frío, las que nacen, a veces le congelaba. Ya que ahora con el cobertizo eso es mejor todavía, ¿no? Ahí van a estar más retenidos las más criitas, ¿no? A veces venía el zorro o la puma y más que todo están ahora.
Well, climate change impacts small producers in different ways. This can have in turn an impact on the quality and the quantity of the fodder the farmers can get from their pastures, but also from their feed crops. Climate change can also impact glaciers, so it can reduce the availability of water at certain periods of the year.
El proyecto Procaméridos es financiado conjuntamente por el Fondo Internacional de Desarrollo Agrícola de las Naciones Unidas, FAO, y el Gobierno de Bolivia. Además de cobertizos, los agricultores recibieron bombas de agua que funcionan con energía solar. Ahora son capaces de extraer agua de los arroyos subterráneos.
The project is supporting 30,000 families in the region, and many of them are women, young people, and indigenous people. And the project is helping on the technical side on the farm, but also in the processing and marketing of the products. The price that a farmer can get out of an animal has increased by 50% thanks to the project.
Puede que el clima esté cambiando y las condiciones sean remotas, pero gracias al proyecto, esta comunidad dispone ahora de las herramientas que necesita para vivir en este maravilloso pero hostil entorno.
El corredor seco centroamericano es una región donde más de 10,5 millones de personas viven y dependen de la agricultura para sobrevivir. Cerca del 50% de esta población vive en condiciones de pobreza, enfrentando los desafíos que imponen las condiciones climáticas extremas. El corredor seco se caracteriza por los largos periodos de sequía seguido de lluvias intensas, representando un desafío a las prácticas agrícolas en esta región y poniendo en riesgo los medios de vida y la seguridad alimentaria de las familias rurales. En muchos casos, estas familias se ven obligadas a migrar, dejando atrás sus tierras y comunidades. Ante este escenario, en el marco del Programa de Cooperación Internacional Brasil-FAO, la Agencia Brasileña de Cooperación, la Organización de las Naciones Unidas para la Alimentación y la Agricultura y los gobiernos de Guatemala, El Salvador y Honduras han sumado esfuerzos para desarrollar el proyecto Innovación para la Reducción de Riesgos Agroambientales en los países del Corredor Seco Centroamericano, Zonificación Agrícola para Riesgos Climáticos SARC y Gestión de Recursos Hídricos. gracias al cual los países están desarrollando estrategias que orienten la implementación de acciones y programas que permitan generar resiliencia y transformar de manera inclusiva los territorios del corredor seco centroamericano. Para ello, la FAO y el gobierno de Brasil han compartido conocimientos técnicos y experiencias de instituciones como la de la empresa brasileña de investigación agropecuaria Embrapa, acciones a las que se sumaron los ministerios de Agricultura y los institutos de investigación de los 3 países. El Instituto de Ciencia y Tecnología Agrícola de Guatemala, la Dirección de Ciencia y Tecnología Agropecuaria de Honduras y el Centro Nacional de Tecnología Agropecuaria y Forestal de El Salvador. Con la introducción de variedades de ciclo fenológico tolerantes a la sequía, este esfuerzo conjunto ha permitido brindar a las familias rurales mayores capacidades para planificar sus actividades agrícolas.
Verónica vive en la zona altiplánica de Bolivia. Su familia se dedica a la cría de alpacas y llamas desde hace 60 años.
Tengo 23 años, soy de la comunidad de Yoñacota. En el ailo viven de la ganadería. Nosotros vendemos como la alpaca, la llama, la oveja. También esquilan también y entonces venden sus prenditas. Vendemos, tejen, es buena calidad. Con eso vivimos, tanto la carne, cuando le carnean, vendemos también esa carne.
El cambio climático ha incrementado las sequías, heladas intensas y granizadas, lo que ha disminuido la esperanza de vida de los animales. Si bien los animales están acostumbrados a vivir en temperaturas frías, sufren si hay fuertes vientos o si no hay refugio.
Más antes, cuando no teníamos proyecto, las llamas en tema del frío, y las que nacen, a veces le congelaba, ya que ahora con el cobertizo eso es mejor todavía, ¿no? Ahí van a estar más retenidos las más criitas, ¿no? A veces venía el zorro o la puma y más que todo están ahora.
Well, climate change impacts small producers in different ways. This can have in turn an impact on the quality and the quantity of the fodder the farmers can get from their pastures, but also from their feed crops. Climate change can also impact glaciers, so it can reduce the availability of water at certain periods of the year.
El proyecto Procaméridos es financiado conjuntamente por el Fondo Internacional de Desarrollo Agrícola de las Naciones Unidas, FAO, y el gobierno de Bolivia. Además de cobertizos, los agricultores recibieron bombas de agua que funcionan con energía solar. Ahora son capaces de extraer agua de los arroyos subterráneos.
The project is supporting 30,000 families in the region, and many of them are women, young people, and indigenous people. And the project is helping on the technical side on the farm, but also in the processing and marketing of the products. The price that a farmer can get out of an animal has increased by 50% thanks to the project.
Puede que el clima esté cambiando y las condiciones sean remotas, pero gracias al proyecto, esta comunidad dispone ahora de las herramientas que necesita para vivir en este maravilloso pero hostil entorno.
El corredor seco centroamericano es una región donde más de 10,5 millones de personas viven y dependen de la agricultura para sobrevivir. Cerca del 50% de esta población vive en condiciones de pobreza, enfrentando los desafíos que imponen las condiciones climáticas extremas. El corredor seco se caracteriza por los largos periodos de sequía seguido de lluvias intensas, representando un desafío a las prácticas agrícolas en esta región y poniendo en riesgo los medios de vida y la seguridad alimentaria de las familias rurales. En muchos casos, estas familias se ven obligadas a migrar, dejando atrás sus tierras y comunidades. Ante este escenario, en el marco del Programa de Cooperación Internacional Brasil-FAO, la Agencia Brasileña de Cooperación, la Organización de las Naciones Unidas para la Alimentación y la Agricultura y los gobiernos de Guatemala, El Salvador y Honduras han sumado esfuerzos para desarrollar el proyecto Innovación para la Reducción de Riesgos Agroambientales en los países del Corredor Seco Centroamericano, Zonificación Agrícola para Riesgos Climáticos SARC y Gestión de Recursos Hídricos, gracias al cual los países están desarrollando estrategias que orienten la implementación de acciones y programas que permitan generar resiliencia y transformar de manera inclusiva los territorios del Corredor Seco Centroamericano. Para ello, la FAO y el Gobierno de Brasil han compartido conocimientos técnicos y experiencias de instituciones como la de la empresa brasileña de investigación agropecuaria Embrapa, acciones a las que se sumaron los ministerios de Agricultura y los institutos de investigación de los 3 países. El Instituto de Ciencia y Tecnología Agrícola de Guatemala, la Dirección de Ciencia y Tecnología Agropecuaria de Honduras y el Centro Nacional de Tecnología Agropecuaria y Forestal de El Salvador. Con la introducción de variedades de ciclo fenológico corto y tolerantes a la sequía, este esfuerzo conjunto ha permitido brindar a las familias rurales mayores capacidades para planificar sus actividades agrícolas.